66205. So as I mentioned in the 4 o'clock hour, today's the day, man. 1 year. 1 year. I I'm I am kind of having a bit of of a lot of emotions. I'm having a lot of emotions about it. And like I said, it's I just recorded an hour with Pilot, and after we recorded the hour with Pilot, we basically I left the station, drove up Valley View, went up to 494, went on the crosstown heading eastbound. I was at a traffic light there, split second of sound of someone hitting the brakes, and they slammed into me between 35, 40 miles an hour. And I'm dead serious when I say this is not an ad campaign, people. The structural integrity of that Toyota Sienna saved my life. I have zero doubt that not only did they save my life, but the reason why I could very easily have been in a wheelchair, paralyzed from the midpoint of my back down. I could be very easily in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I think the Toyota Sienna, I mean, they're designed to take a wallop. Holy God, did that thing take a wallop. I remember going and looking at the car after we had to clear everything out of it because it got totaled. You know, it did its job. I remember looking at it and it not really registering how much damage. The car comes in basically 3 sections. And if you're hit flush from behind, basically the sections are designed to take the blunt of the force. The back seat, the back section was completely crushed. The midsection was bent pretty good too. But the front section where I was sitting was, relatively intact. And so, it really was remarkable how that car, what that car did. And I'll own one for the rest of my life. I will. Safest vehicle I've ever been in. I remember having a walker. I remember it was early December. Snowflakes were starting to fly as I left the hospital, and my doctor looked at me and says, "You cannot fall. You cannot fall. You just cannot fall. You cannot fall." And think about that as you're walking outside and snowflakes are starting to come down right at the beginning of this. I couldn't really walk anywhere. I remember my cousins came into town right around New Year's. And we went over to the Como Zoo and the conservatory, and that was the biggest outing I'd had up to that point. I remember being so freaking exhausted after that. We went and looked at the flowers and I hiked around. I had the back brace on. Like I said, broke T5, T6, so I've got rods and screws in T4 and T7 that are holding my back together. And I remember how exhausted I was just moving around after that. I was drugged out. I did some shows. I probably should not have done some radio shows back then. And thanks to everyone here at the station. I'll say that because we very quickly, Todd Mickelson came in and filled in very quickly, and I appreciate Todd doing that for us. We were able to hook up the system at my house and at least got us up to the point where we had enough of the best of shows or the brand new to you shows recorded, and we got out of the station and we basically hunkered down for the rest of the holidays. I remember coming back when the first time I came back to the station, I think it was sometime in January. I could not remember the door code, which tells you, I'd been through a few things. I couldn't walk outside, not in winter. I got to a point where late winter last year, I had crampons and I would put those on and I was able to it gave me the stability I needed outside. But, without those, I wouldn't have gone outside. And even though with those, you're only as good as on ice as you can be. I remember each individual hurdle of, okay, you can start walking again. And to the fine folks at the Edina Dome, which is Braemar Dome, they call it Braemar Dome. I call it the Edina Dome. It is off of Valley View and 169. I was going over there and I remember walking my first mile. I remember walking eventually 2 miles. I remember enjoyed walking there more, and nothing against you guys at the Y. I enjoy the Y, but the track at the Y was much smaller. And so it got redundant. I bought if you know baseball, do you know a pitch count thing in baseball? I bought one of those just so I could keep track of the 50 laps I had to do 3 miles on that small track because I kept losing track of, am I on 32 or 42? Couldn't remember. I remember when they let me start lifting again, which has been nice. I also think, I do lift weights, and I think part of the reason why I was able to sustain this with just the minimal damage I had was because I had, muscle mass built up. As a matter of fact, my doctor actually said that. You had muscle mass built up. That's why I was able to do that. I remember the insane amount of people reaching out to me, people I hadn't heard from in years, calling me. Metza calls me and we ended up talking for about 30 minutes. Just, how are you doing? How are you getting through this? All this stuff. Michael Broadcorp reached out very quickly. How are you doing? How are you going? I had politicians. I had, other people. The amount of friends bringing food over and stuff like that. It was very touching and very dear and sincere. I remember Jack Rice. I called Jack and I said, I think I need someone, personal injury lawyer. And he gave me a name right away because he's a defense lawyer. He's not a personal injury lawyer. He's a defense lawyer. A woman named Lindsay Keller, who is phenomenal. Lindsay Keller was phenomenal. Phenomenal. She knew insurance. And by the way, I'm going to say this to anyone out there. If you are in an personal injury situation, you need to have someone who can navigate insurance because that is the most messed up freaking industry in this country, whether that's medical insurance, auto insurance. Holy God, what a messed up system that is. I got a front row view for this whole thing. And I just really like it's to a point hard to wrap your head around at how bad they were at communicating, keeping track of things, how in the medical side, you would get a bill for the one type of x-ray, then you get a bill for the second type of x-ray, and then you get a bill for the guy that looked at the x-ray. Seriously, you get a bill from the emergency room, you get a bill from the doctors in the emergency room, you get a bill from the nurses and support staff in the nursery in the emergency room. I will never forget being in the hospital and watching fans of classic television. I turned on TV and I was just sitting there and I was depressed and I was depressed because this is hard. It was hard. And the Woody's wedding episode of Cheers was on. And if you've not seen that, that is one of the greatest all-time episodes of any TV show ever. It is hilarious up and down the whole thing. The whole thing is just spectacular and absolutely perfect. And I actually laughed. I turned towards religion. We had a wonderful pastor, spiritual leader over at the hospital who was phenomenal. And then um, Pastor Jason at Westwood came to our house and sat down and talked with us and was a guiding compass for me personally and my wife and coming through this. My kids were phenomenal going through this, trying to cover as much stuff as possible. Um, I'm still not there. Still not there. I watched the court system. I don't want to say it. Did it fail me? It did. I don't feel it held the driver to the level of punishment it should have been. I'm not looking for someone to be going to jail for life by any means. But I saw, second on the screwed up list, further back than insurance, but the legal system and the way that they factor how much they're going to go after justice, I think is a little bit flawed to say the least. I was talking to my wife this weekend. We went out and, was it Minnewaska, Lake Minnewaska Park? We were hiking out there. And asked me one of the things which was different. I said, before I worked out more for vanity, and now I definitely work out for necessity. I'm 55. I've got to make it to retirement. I've got to make it to this point where I'm going to be Okay, I'm gonna have at least, Medicaid, Medicare if the Republicans don't take it all away from us. I gotta get to that point. And so now I don't look at this as as kind of one of those things where I just wanna look good. I look at this as I've got to survive. And whereas on some things I have come back and basically at the same point I was beforehand, on a lot of things I haven't, not yet. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to get back to that. And that's humbling. That's very humbling. I do have occasionally the a little jolt of pain or something like that in my back that I don't know if it's necessarily the back saying, "What the heck's with the rods and screws?" Or if it's just I haven't moved a muscle in some way. Usually it's not like I'm, you know, doing a trapeze act or anything like this. I'll just like reach for the salt shaker and like, oh, I just kind of tweak myself. I have a numb spot in the middle of my back that's never going to heal. That is a constant reminder of what happened. Yeah, it sucks. What I went through wasn't as hard as a lot of what other people have to go through. I keep that in mind. Doesn't mean it was a breeze or a piece of cake. It's not what it was not on my game plan. It was not on my bingo card. Trust me when I say that. But I gotten through it. And doing this radio show has been a big key of being able to look forward to doing this every day. And I still look forward to doing this. The reason I brought up the France and that's a person that just when you read that tweet doesn't seem to be happy at all. I'm still one of the luckiest bastards that ever lived, man. I get to do this gig. I get to talk with you every day. I get to hang out with you. I get to be part of your life, and that is incredibly cool. And I am very grateful for that. So, probably be the last time I talk about it for a while, unless I have something that reoccurs. Insurance is a nightmare. Get yourself a really good personal injury lawyer. Learn how to accept help. That's a big one, people. Learn how to accept help. Realize that even with the best intentions, you might not ever come back, but don't treat your scars like they're still wounds. To a point, you need to keep those as reminders at the very least, badges of honor, maybe even to a point of that you can come back.